right, we are recording this. Welcome everyone to this afternoon's Tuesday with CKLS. Today we're going to talk about the CKLS System Grant Questionnaire, the expenditure of grant funds form, and we'll also go over the state public library survey and annual report. All of these reports will open up January 1st, and then they will be due in February. CKLS forms will be due February, let me look it up, 6th, which is a Saturday. And then the state forms should be due that Saturday after, which would be February 13th. I haven't got a confirmation yet on that exact date, but that's following form as the previous year. So that's my best guess there. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. And let's move some things around if it'll let me. There we go. All right. So I'm going to start with the CKLS forms because there's more information there that I have for them. And then we'll go over to the state side after we do this CKLS forms. If you go to the CKLS website and you click on the grants tab, you're going to be taken to the information specifically for the 2020 System Grant and the System Grant Questionnaire. It's going to have all the links you need to fill out both forms. And it's also going to have some information about budgeting. So what you received this year and what you can expect to receive next year. So what you received this year is what you earned in 2019. So I have the chart there, so you know how much you received this year. And then what you will receive next year is what you earned this year. So I also have that chart. I tried to be very specific in the way I named them. So you have to read carefully to know which year we're talking about. It's always 2 years and it always gets blended. I do have, and let me put that in the chat again, I do have the handouts. In the handouts are the sample forms for both the expenditure form and for the System Grant Questionnaire. Feel free to print these off and fill them out so that you have it all ready to go. I am also going to try to do that with the state survey, but because I don't have access to it beforehand, I don't know how it'll work out, but I'm going to play with that this month and have it ready for you by January 1. Okay. So let's do the System Grant Questionnaire first. And just like last year, I'm going to pre-fill those forms out for you as much as I can, for as much information as I have for you. So on the CKLS grants page, look for the online forms. I'm going to have a link to the questionnaire and to the expenditure form. But what you're really going to want is right here. It's going to be the pre-filled forms. And I have a link. It's a link for each library. So you have a specific link just for you. It's going to take you to this page here. And you'll see that I have a link for your System Grant Questionnaire and then a link for your expenditure. You just need to hover over that link and then click on this little, it looks like a cartoon, you know, a cartoon speaker box, you know, where it tells you what they're saying in the little box. That's what it looks like to me. So click on that bubble and it's going to take you to your pre-filled form. So for the library, I'm going to go ahead and select your library so you make sure you're on the right form. You don't want to fill somebody else's out. I'm going to have all the questions filled out as fully as I have information for. So if I don't have all that information, it'll be blank or I'll just have the information that I have for you. Question 1, did your library have a voting rep at the full system annual meeting? And then I say yes, and then I list the person that we had representing your library. Question 2, I ask if 6 or more staff members attended, or if staff attended 6 or more CE trainings in 2020. And then I list the staff member, and then the number of events they attended. And I went ahead and just kept it a consecutive numerical list, even if there are multiple staff members. So you'll see the name and then the numbering. And then the total here should match your number, your listed number. For question 3, which is, did a quorum of your library board attend training? I check yes or no, and then I list who I had attending training. I have the board members numbered, and then I list what events they attended. When you get to this point after January 1, hopefully most of this one is all filled out for you. So your job here is to go through and make sure I got everything, and then I recorded it accurately. If some of the libraries have already submitted to me board minutes, but in the pre-filled form version, I can't add those minutes in. If I have your minutes, I will try to put a link. I'm pointing, like you can see. I'm going to put a link here in the question above it. In 3B, I'll put the link to the minutes below. If you want to add the minutes again, you can. But if you've already submitted this information to me, you don't have to do it again. Actively lending on Share It, because 2020 is the year that it is. This is one that we have just said everybody lent as best they were able to on this one. So this one is a yes. And then we have the summer library program in 3 parts. You had your program schedule, calendar, or flyer sent to Patty by June 30th. You had programs that were for the school age of K through 6, and you submitted evaluation. And those are yes or no. I also list your library's online presence, whether it's Facebook or a website or some other online presence. I have the web address listed on there for you. And then I ask if you post it online at least once a month, and I look at that as well. And then I put in a little bit more details in 7 because I am pre-filling it for you. And I'm also tracking this information. I thought that putting your number of items owned at the beginning of 2020 and your number of items deleted in 2020 would be helpful for the state report, because they ask those specific questions as well. So you have that information here. So when you go to the state report, you have it again. And then I also list the percent that you've weeded. The part that you will need to fill out in this form is how you spent CE money. And I know that this year, CE money wasn't spent like you had planned. And you might have leftover CE money this year. So remember that CKLS will reimburse your CE allotment up to $700 from what you spent the year before. So in 2020, you only spent $350, which means that you, now I have to do math. Oh. Yeah, 400, is it 450? That doesn't sound right. 350.
350.
Thank you. 350 is still in your CE piggy bank. We're going to reimburse that 350 that you spent. And then, so then your CE allotment piggy bank is back up to $700 in 2021.
And the assumption is that if you didn't spend that $700 on CE, that $700 is still sitting there. So the idea, we're not going to pay you $700 because you spent that money doing something else. So it's whatever you prove that was spent is what you're reimbursed back for, backed up to that $700.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that clarification. I do have your electric signature on this form, and I also have you check that you confirm the information given in this form is true, complete, and accurate. So this is what we do when we ask for an online form to verify that you're being truthful on your forms. That's why I ask you to go through all of my pre-filled answers and make sure I got it correct. If it's wrong, you can go in and fix it. Okay. So that is the system grant form. Make sure it's all accurate. I should have everything pre-filled that I have information for. For the libraries that are not on Pathfinder, there are a few of you yet that I don't have your items weeded for 2020, you can go ahead and give those to me and I can pre-fill them. If not, I will put in the information that I have. I have your number of items owned at the beginning of 2020 from last year's state report, and I just take that number over.
Maribeth, I have a couple of questions from the chat.
Oh, yes.
My first question is, what kind of events have people spent money on when everything has been via Zoom? And then do you need receipts for that CE money?
Okay. No, I do not need receipts. You can spend the CE money on registration fees and for staff time if you attend outside your regularly scheduled library hours. So we want to make sure that your staff time is paid for whatever library work you're doing. If you're watching an archive after hours, CE money can pay your salary for that. If you're attending live, but it's not on the time where you're open, CE money can pay for your wages since you're attending outside your regularly scheduled events. It can also be paid for outside workshops that have a registration fee. So if there was, I know that Slim's had some webinars, I think some of them have been free, but there's been like a PLA, Public Library Association workshop, or any other kind of workshop like that that's not paid for by CKLS, so there's a fee to it. The CE money can go toward that as well. In normal years, CE money could also go toward travel costs, mileage. If you need to pay for a meal, it can also be paid for if you need to stay the night before or the night after. The CE money can go to pay for that as well.
And we did have one workshop where a lot of people came to before this all happened. Summer Library actually happened this year. I know it seems like light years away, but it was the first week of March. And so we did have some folks that spent the night. But so if you spent the night, if you have gas receipts that you did, if you had somebody work in the library that was a paid employee working for you, extra hours of their schedule, that would have counted. So those are some ways that you might have spent some money. And I know it seems like light years away, but we did have one big workshop before all this happened. Frankly, I don't remember what we did before that. I just remember Summer Library. But if you attended an event in the early part of the year in January, February, or early March, you might need to go back to your calendar and go, what did I actually do? The example that Maribeth used was Bison, and that's a really good example. The librarian attended 12 hourly events, mostly presented by CKLS, but the library is only open 15 hours, and she didn't even work there yet when some of those were on. So she actually watched archives, and so was able to get some reimbursement that way. So we had to get a little creative this year, but we know that some of you did spend some money. It just may have been forgotten because it's been so long ago.
Yes, there was a book repair workshop in mid-February, February 12th, I believe, and there was also a maker van that same day that was here in Great Bend. So if any of you attended that, either one, it was a morning workshop and an afternoon workshop. That would count as well towards CE. All right, again, I'm going to show you. You're going to hover over the link you want and then click on the little speech bubble that looks right there. I think there was a question out there.
And for those member libraries who are a part of the strategic planning meeting, we did meet in person in the early part of the year as well. So there were 3 meetings before we closed down. So those travel expenses could be included as part of that.
How does it work for when we were working from home and attended workshops online outside of what would be our regular hours? If they were outside your regular hours, then the CE money could pay for your wages. If you're working from home, I'm hoping that the library was still paying you for your regular library hours. So this would be outside your library hours, whether you were working from home or not. Webinars and archives, we don't know where you're joining us from. If you have your camera on, we can guess, but we are trusting you to keep track of what your library time is. And that includes cutting out circles for story time, and that includes watching CE and archives.
And we know with this being an unusual year, a lot of times the work that we did wasn't during our regular time, but one of the things that we encouraged at the very beginning was that you work with your board to arrange to get paid if you were on safe at home orders. And we only know of a couple libraries that was not a possibility for. So you do need to you have to look at the picture and make sure that you were only being paid for the hours that you got full pay for the time you were supposed to. If you did work that extra time, that your board is aware that those hours were paid in some form or fashion, and those could be the showings of the reimbursement on the CE side. Somebody says, what if we were watching during other hours when working from home?
If you're watching during your regularly scheduled library hours, whether you're working from home or in the library, those will be paid for from your library wages. But if you're working from home outside your regularly scheduled, those would qualify for CE. If you have to hire a substitute to watch the library while you attend CE, and that includes if you hire somebody to take your place while you're watching CE online, that would also count for reimbursement from CE.
But approval to work more hours than your regularly scheduled time is a conversation you have to have with your board.
Yes.
You cannot make the assumption, safe at home or not, that you're automatically going to get paid unless you put into play this conversation about there is CE money, these hours would be CE money, and I'm keeping track of both the CE money and of my time and wage.
Yes.
Because your board needs to be a part of that picture, because you can't just decide to work 25 hours a week when you're only paid for 20, because your library budget is going to be out of money before October if you do that each week.
Correct. Okay, so this one is the 2020 CKLS expenditure of system grant funds. This is asking you how you spent the CKLS system grant money you received this year. I don't need to know how you spent other funds from your library that you got this year, just your CKLS system grant funds. I have some that I can pre-fill, but most of this is one that you will need to fill out yourself. I will go ahead and select your library, and I will put in there the amount that you received from CKLS system grant funds here in question 1. So when it asks for salaries or books or library materials, I just want to know what of the $71.50 that you received from CKLS, what, if any, was spent in salaries. I don't need to know the total amount you spent on salaries, just what you spent from the $71.50. Okay, so there's a question. If you're cutting out circles from story time, this counts as CE. I'm sorry, no, that's not what I meant. Library work should be kept track of and paid for. That's federal labor laws. So you need to keep track of all your library time that you spent. Cutting out circles for story time would not count for CE, but you need to keep track of that time. And legally, your library should pay for that wages. However, that's why you need to work with your board to know how much time you might need to spend over. If you only have 12 hours or 10 hours of approved time, that's what your board has budgeted. And you can't really go over because there's no funds to go for it. So you need to be very conscientious about your library time and realize that some things may not be able to happen. If you need to cut out circles for story time and you don't have the hours to do it, maybe that's something everybody at the board meeting does while you go through everything at the board. Okay. I did go ahead and fill out letter H, which is Courier. If you're 3-day-a-week, CKLS provided $1,050. So I'm assuming that's what you spent from CKLS funds for that. If you spent more, if you paid off the whole $1,200 for 3-day-a-week, you can put that in there. But I know for sure that 1,050 of CKLS money was for Courier. So I put that in there. Feel free to update it as needed. Other things I ask is if you spend any CKLS money for books or library materials, utilities, supplies, continuing education. This again is going to be kind of a follow-up of how you spent CE. Let me find the right form. For question 8 in the System Grant Questionnaire, it gives you, I don't know, 10 or 11 options, and then it asks for the total. So your total spent in CE would be your answer here if you spent only CKLS money for CE. You're going to probably spend at least around 700, and we're going to know that this year you may spend less than 700 because most of our workshops were online. So we want you to give an accurate recording there. Should the CKLS grant amount be broken down for different allotments or rough estimate on what it is all used for? Some libraries choose to use the system grant funds completely for salaries. We got $71.50 from CKLS funds and we spent it all on salaries. That's okay. But we know that there was a Courier allotment. So we know that 1,050 of money somewhere paid for that Courier. I'm assuming that you took that 1,050 from CKLS and used it toward the Courier. But again, it is your choice how you choose to use it.
So the 7150 in this particular example is the total amount that includes Courier.
It includes, yes, okay, thank you. When you get your grant letter, it's going to tell you, let me find a better chart, just a second. I have one, okay. It's going to tell you what each of the little elements of the system grants there were. So since Bison has been our guinea pig, we're going to use them. These 1, 2, 3, 4, these 4 allotments make up the entirety of the system grant. This is for 2019, earned in 2019, received in 2020. We know that the total amount to account for was $71.50. This is where those funds came from. 300 per capita, 700 CE, 1050 for the Courier, and that's how we get this total. The base system allotment is where the deductions would take place should there be a missed standard. It's not 10% from the total system grant, it's 10% from the base system allotment. Okay. And then I do ask you for question number 2 in the expenditure form. I ask you for that total. I know that your total spent may not be completely the same as what we have in question number 1. Because if you didn't spend all of your CE money, there's going to be a little bit less there. If your difference from what you spent, from what you received is more than $700, I'm going to be giving you a phone call and asking why that other money was not spent. Does that make sense? Question 3 on the expenditure form is total amount of grant anticipated. This is the grant that you earned in 2020 and will receive in 2021. After you've filled out the system grant questionnaire, you're going to know which standards you met and which standards you missed. I have, this is the CKLS grants homepage. I have the I have the potential for the 2020 grant. What you earned in 2020, what you would receive in 2021. So it's going to have one new allotment in there, which is the public services allotment. So we have our base grant, we have our per capita grant, we have our public services allotment, your CE allotment, and the Courier allotment. You will notice that the Courier allotment has gone down from CK because we got a discount for 2021 because of the months we were closed and weren't using the Courier. So we know that Bison has the possibility to earn a total of $73.24. If they should have missed a standard, it would be 10% of the base system grant, which is $510, 10%. So doing some math, if they missed one, they would take this total minus the amount they missed, 510. Since I'm pre-filling your system grant questionnaire, I'm going to have a good estimate of what I think your grant is going to be. I am going to pre-fill that if I have a good idea of what it's going to be. So that should help you out. What will be the total cost of the Courier in 2021? The library's portion is still the same. For 3-day a week, that is $150. And for 3-day a week, I believe that's $300. So
5-day a week.
5-day a week, I'm sorry. 5-day a week is $300. 3-day a week is $150 for the library's portion. CKLS portion is $490. So $490 plus $150 is $640. Sure. That's whatever $490 plus $150 is.
So this is, please understand that this is a one-time break. Mm-hmm. And you still have to pay your portion. Partly because once it goes out of your budget, you're not ever going to get it back in your budget. And you have to understand that although the number dropped on the CKLS side, you still have to look at how highly subsidized in a normal year your Courier portion is. So this is an opportunity for you to see that although this time the money's not rolling down and landing on you, you're still paying less than 1/3 of what CKLS is dumping into each library for 3-day a week. So usually this number is $1050, correct?
Yes.
Or correct. Is it 900?
It's $1050. Yes. It was $1050 last year.
So just understand that once we go back to normal life, when you get this possible refilled form for the next year, it's going to show back that Courier allotment that CKLS put in is going to be back to its regular number. So we understand that you that the discount didn't come all the way down to you, but you have to realize for how many days you received Courier exactly how cheap it is.
And there is a question, Amy, I will come back to your CE question once we finish the form so that we're not jumping back and forth so much. Yes, CKLS is still paying for Courier overages in 2021. Okay. The next question on the expenditure form is one where you check every box. This reminds you how CKLS system grant funds can be spent. So I want you to read each of those and check that you've read it. You cannot spend system grant funds to pay off debt or go into savings. They cannot be spent on renovations or new building purchases, new building construction, excuse me. And they must be spent or encumbered by the end of the year they're received. That CE allotment is where you have a little bit of wiggle room. And that's why if your discrepancy between question 1, how much did you receive in 2020, and question 2, what was your total spent in 2020 of CKLS funds, if those have a difference of more than $700, I'll be contacting you to figure that out. And then the fourth checkbox is system grant funds can otherwise be spent as the library sees fit. These three above, these three right here are the only restrictions on how CKLS funds can be spent.
And so this is for, if I were doing this for the first time and I were sitting in one of your shoes, I would be looking at a couple specific things. I'd be looking at that total number, that first allotment number, and knowing that I can spend that all on salary. But the other two that I have to really worry about, I have to worry about the Courier money, and I have to worry about that CE money. So if I were doing it, I would take care of Courier and CE first, and then the rest of it, I would likely probably just dump it to salaries. You can separate it out if you want to, but you know, what is going to be the easiest bookkeeping for you might be one of the questions that you want to look at. We did get a question about the public service allotment is not designated on how we spend it, correct?
Correct.
Only the Courier and CE money. So somebody shared with me if that is a private question, and that's exactly how I would read it, and I think they read it the same. I'm going to tick off the things I know I have to do, then I have this pot of money to figure out which line item I'm going to put it on my regular budget.
Correct. Find the easy button. If you spent all your system grant money in one of those fields, it's going to be a lot easier to keep track of it. I know some split up, well, we have spent 100 here, 100 there, 100 there. That's fine, but you're making it a little more complicated than you probably need to go. I need to know how that 71.50 was spent. And that's all I need. The public services allotment only has those 3 criteria that were listed in question 4. We used to have 3 forms, and I combined the expenditure form with the certificate of eligibility form. And so that's what the next part of this expenditure form is about. Did the library budget increase or stay the same for 2021? Yes or no? If no, you'll need to answer 6. If yes, you can click NA. Question 6, did your library mill levy stay the same or increase? Now we know that 2021 budget is going to be hard. There's going to be less tax money coming in. And so your mill levy may not be generating the same revenue as it was this year. So that's what we're looking at your mill levy. This is your maintenance of effort that is required by the state to be eligible for state library grants, and you must be eligible for the state library financial aid, or not financial aid, state library grant aid to be eligible for the system grants.
These are what we've traditionally called the 2 tests.
Yes.
And we made them sound hard, but they are 2 simple questions. One or the other can affect the ability to get state aid, which ultimately results in not being able to get CKLS allotment. So answer the questions honestly, because we cannot help you if you don't.
There are some steps to take if you must answer no for both of these, but we need to know that so we can help you make those steps. Where do you find out if your mill levy changed? Your city clerk will have that information, or your county clerk if your city doesn't have it. And I will show you in the state report where that information is for last year. So you compare last year's to this year's. Number 7 states that all grant funds will be accounted for separately from the regular budget. That does not mean it's in a separate account necessarily, but in your line item for your budget for your library, there'll be CKLS System Grant 7150, and then how 7150 was spent. We also ask for your electronic signature and to confirm that everything is true. Okay.
I have a question from the chat. Okay. Is CKLS still paying the Courier overage in 2021?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I thought I had answered that one. Thank you. Okay, there was one previous. Back to CE reporting. Since most were online, do you need the times along with dates? For here in Otis, regular library hours are often afternoon and evening. A lot of courses were during the morning. Let me pull up that form again, and I'll show you how I'm entering your already reported archives for CE. And that's going to help you a lot in question 8 of the CKLS form. I have listed your events, the date it was viewed, and what it was. If it was an archive, it should say archive on the end. So then we know that you did not watch it when it was live. And this should help you know what we have record for what you watched, and this will help you know what was spent for CE. You can see, okay, I watched it on November 30th. We weren't open November 30th. That was outside regular library hours.
And as far as time of day, we don't need to know when you watched an archive, or of course, if you watched it live, we would know that because it's here. But if you watch the archive, we don't need to know. Things that are not library related need to be approved by Maribeth. If they are things like the ARSL weekly roundtable, those things count. And I can almost guarantee that I was in that room, so I can guarantee that I knew if you were there or not, and that discussion was had. So something like the ARSL roundtables, the special things that Emporia State did, those things count. But they need to be being kept track on your personal calendar so they can be entered here. Maribeth did say that you can make the changes right here in the document. You don't have to have Maribeth's approval. This is your document, but when you get to the very bottom, when you sign it, the assumption is everything that you filled out here is honest and true.
Yes. And if it's not CKLS related, I'm going to make sure that it's library related. If there's something on there that says, I don't know, like Italian cooking webinar, I'm going to question it. And it may be, well, I was going to do an Italian cooking program series. Okay, that connects. But if it was just, well, I wanted to learn Italian cooking, well, that's a personal webinar and that shouldn't be counted toward it.
The other exception that I think that we would make for this year with little question would be COVID in the library, because there was so much of that COVID in the library, but the discussion was more on the health matter side, and those things would be appropriate. But for example, if you were taking a sign language class because you were planning to teach sign language, that would need to be an approval by Maribeth, because that's one of those things that if you're just taking something for your own professional development, personal, that doesn't relate to your work, then those are not things that we can pay for, so to speak. So,
okay. I am going to paste here in the chat the link to the next part, because it is the 17 extra questions from, where did it go? I lost my chat box, there it is. So 15 extra questions about COVID onto the annual report. So let me paste that there. Will information on meetings attended be available to us before 1/1? Not sure I got everything listed on my calendar or sent in documentation. Contact me separately, Gloria, and I will send you a list of what I have. I do have it all listed, so it is available. I just haven't posted it publicly, but I do have all that, so I can get that to you. All right, so for the state library report, you go to the state library, which is kslib.info. Hopefully you already have that bookmarked on your computers. You hover over the librarians tab and you go to the Kansas Public Library Survey and State Report. And then you will click on Counting Opinions link to log in, visit. Note that it has not yet been updated for 2021. It's still for last year's. So I'm going to click on that link and I'm going to try to log in. If you do not have your password for this part, I can look it up for you. So contact me and I can get you your password to get into the Kansas State Library report.
Well, please don't wait till the day it's due to call Maribeth and ask for your password.
This one takes time. If you wait till the day it's due to fill it out, you're gonna have a bad day. And there's no reason to wait that long. This one, you can also fill out partially, save it, and come back later. So I recommend doing it in stages. Okay. Let's do bison again, just because that's who I'm picking on today. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Remember that these are answers from January 2020 for 2019. Some of your answers are gonna be pre-filled as before. Make sure your Facebook page link is correct. Make sure your library website page, if you have one, is correct. Check your number of registered users. How do you know what your registered users are? Okay. Can you see Koha on my screen? Yeah, okay. For years now, I have put the reports for the state library annual report, the reports you need from Koha for it, I have linked at the bottom of the page. So this should look familiar. I have also put the number that they answer as part of the link. So let's see if I can split my screen. This might give somebody a headache though, we'll see. So in 2.2a, it asks for the number of registered users. If we look on the Koha homepage, this is the page where you log in at. You scroll under your buttons, you're gonna see 2.2a, number of registered users. If you click on that link, it'll take you to the report, which you then run for your library, and it'll give you your number of registered users, and you'd fill it in. When there is a big change, it may ask you, why is this number so different from the previous one? And it may be something like, we cleaned up our patron records and we got rid of all the records that were expired more than 3 years ago. That updates it. Sometimes it's, well, we have a new librarian and stats have been kept differently than they were previously. Those are all okay.
And in this case, it may be the fact that you allowed online library cards. You may have users that you have yet to see in your building that are listed as borrower.
So when you fill out this and you only get, let's say you get halfway done and you're done for the day, that's all you can figure out. You would go up here, right now it says unlock, but there is there'll be a save button at the top. I'm sorry, I can't show you exactly, but if you scroll to the top of this page, up here, there will be a save option. It'll save what you've already entered, and then you can come back and finish it. You can also click on verify, which would be up here in this top right corner. Verify will check your answers, and if it has anything that causes an alert, there'll be some red text at the top, and it'll link you to that question and tell you what it's asking about. Usually when you get that red alert, that is when you would click on this little, it looks like a pen and paper. So I'm going to say, click on the notepad and you type in a note and explain why that answer is what it is. Sometimes you just click in, answer is correct. For those of you that have never filled out this form before, contact me in January, closer to the beginning of the month than the last, and I will walk you through it. For every first-time librarian that's filling this out, I will walk you through this. I will set up a time for you. We'll probably do it over the phone and via Zoom. I will tell you what you need to gather beforehand. Most of it is treasury stuff, and then we can go through it together. Okay. The stuff that is important from your treasurer. It's going to want to know what your current salary is. It just wants to know your hourly rate. And then you're going to put how many hours a week you work. But here is the mill levy rate. So we had a question earlier, how do we know if our mill levy has changed? From your city clerk, or you may need to get from your county clerk, get your current mill levy rate for 2021 and 2020. And then you'll be able to see if this has changed. It's going to have your ad valorem taxes, or your taxes and what's raised there. And then it's going to ask what your mill levy rate is. And this is how you will know if that has stayed the same, increased, or decreased. All this information for part 6 is what your treasurer or your city clerk will have for you. You will see question, where is it? System grant funds. I am going to send this information to Alice at the State Library to get this pre-filled. If she can't do it, I can pre-fill it for you. This is your answer for number 1 in your expenditure form, the 7150. And this down here would be your total revenue that you received for your library in 2020. Okay. Question 8 is for your salaries and wages. This is what your treasurer will have. How much did you spend in salaries? Do you have an employee benefits fund? What was spent there? This one here is going to auto-generate the number. It's going to add those two together. It's going to ask what was spent in materials, what was spent on ebooks, what was spent on other operating materials. Okay. Also, it's going to ask how many books were owned at the beginning of 2020, which is your answer in 7A of your system grant fund, which I've pre-filled for you. And it's going to ask what was withdrawn, which I also have for you. For a multiple time librarian, this can be tricky. Yes, I can help walk you through that. Even if you get stuck in your multiple time librarian, please call me and I'll help you. I won't walk you through every question, but I'll walk you through what you're having a question on, whatever number you're having a question on, I'll help you with. So don't hesitate to call, even if you are a experienced, I've done this a million times librarian, there's going to be questions. Please give me a call. Also on the Koha homepage, I will have your PIL borrowing and PIL lending numbers, your links to those reports. And I also will link to your Sunflower e-library numbers and your Hoopla numbers, which are questions 9.2 through 9.5, I believe, 9.4. It's going to ask you what is available. The state library is going to pre-fill what they know, and then you would just fill in the rest.
This Friday's Mr. Michael's doing 5-minute Fridays on Koha Pathfinder stuff. And this week his how to run a report. So that will give you another piece of archived material for you to look at. But, you know, one of the big keys of running a report is making sure that you choose your library.
Yes. When you run a report, and this one was 11.1 and 11.2, fill in all the blanks and fill in for the range you're looking for. So we're looking for the whole year for circulation. So I would run it from January 1st to December 31st for my library. If you run it and you're like, I don't know what I clicked because I got distracted halfway through, just run it again. That happens to me a lot. I run it and then I get distracted. Yes, Michael's 5-minute Friday is pre-recorded and then he sends it out as a link. Okay. For the summer library program, we will try to pre-fill this as much as possible. I can't guarantee I'll get it pre-filled before January 1, but I will get it pre-filled that first week of January. Because I don't have access to it until January 1 either. So it's all what I can do with the state library beforehand.
And with a new state data coordinator at the state, we don't know how much of it she will pre-fill. Up until last year, the summer library numbers were pre-filled for us. And then we changed people. So we don't know if she's going to place to have those done as well. So, but we'll make sure we do whatever we can at the local level.
Yes, I will try to get that done as much as I can. Then of course we have the state aid amount, and you should know how much you got in state aid. I think they pre-fill this for you. And then how you spent that state aid money. Most of state aid money is so small, usually people use it in one place. Make sure for any blank in the state report, you either put a 0 or an answer. Don't just leave it blank. You'll get an error in the big red when you verify, and it won't let you submit until there's something in that answered blank. Part 13 is going to ask about your Kansas SEPA. And SEPA is Child Internet Protection Act. Every 3 years, your library board needs to review and approve their internet policy, which should include a SEPA portion in their policy. Jeff Hickson from the state library has been emailing those libraries that are due this year to renew their SEPA. So when you get that, this is what they're talking about. It's a Child Internet Protection Act. And it's that what your library is doing to prevent children from accessing content on the internet that they shouldn't. So what kind of filter do you have on your library computers, which children have access to? And then 14 is the civil rights certificate. Please read that fully. Once you have read it, you'll check yes or no. And then at the bottom will be the respondent's name. If you filled this out last year, it should have your information on there, but make sure it's current. If you're new, make sure you update with your name. If you've changed your library's email, please update that as well. Okay, now the fun part. The state library has gotten their questions that IMLS, Institute of Museums and Library Services, has sent down to them. So that's from the federal level. There are 15 questions. They're yes and no. They're not statistics like we had thought they would be in July, but they're yes or no. The statistics that you did keep will still be useful because we believe that next year they will be asking more COVID-related statistical questions. Okay, so I sent this link in the chat. I think most of you have seen it, but let me post it again. Just a second. Okay. We're going to go through them quickly, but there's more clarifications in the link. So make sure that print this one out, and then you can have it beside you when you go through these questions on the state report. Also, when the state library comes out with their webinar about how to fill out the state report, I will make sure that either we get the archive or you can attend it live. Hopefully we can do both, but sometimes they sneak past me. But we'll make sure that you get the training you need for it. Will the chat come through with the archive? Yes, we can save the chat as well, Linda. Okay, was your library physically closed to the public for any period of time due to the coronavirus? Yes or no? And then there's a clarification. If the building was physically closed, even if you were still offering virtual or curbside service, that counts as closed. Question 2, did library staff continue to provide services to the public during any portion of the period when the building was physically closed? Yes, no, or not applicable.
And that could include online programming or curbside or appointment services.
Mm-hmm. So if you answered yes for question 1, then you would answer yes or no for question 2. If you answered no, the building never closed, then you would do not applicable for number 2. Did your library add or increase access to electronic collection materials during the pandemic? So did you increase borrows? Did you put more funding towards Sunflower e-Library? There's a whole bunch of options there to help clarify what they're asking for. Did your library allow users to complete registration for library cards online without coming to the library? This includes by phone before the pandemic. So did you offer online registration before the pandemic? Did your library allow users to complete registration for cards online during the pandemic? Pathfinder users? Yes.
The answer is yes.
We turned on online registration, I believe in March, maybe April, for online registration. We also did that for the state library card. Did your library provide reference services via the internet or phone when the building was physically closed? Reference services include via email, chat, phone, or text. And I would also probably count Facebook direct message, Facebook Messenger there.
So that's not the question, is your library open, but it is the question, hey, my kid needs to know how tall the tallest mountain is. Can you help me? Or can you connect me to the state page on COVID restrictions and those kinds of questions? Something that you had to look up is considered a reference question. But when you're in the building, where the bathroom is and where the copier is are not the same kind of reference questions. So it's asking you to actually answer questions and provide those in some form or fashion while the building was closed.
So something I didn't show you, but will be linked on the handouts, will be the instructions for the 2020 state annual report. And that's what this, for more information about what makes a reference transaction 2.8, that's in the instructions for the state report. I don't have those instructions yet because they are not posted. I have the 2019 ones and I want to wait until we have the 2020 ones so we're not confused. Do we count that we were closed due to the mandate? If your building was physically closed during COVID for any reason, that counts as yes. And what closed is physically closed, even if you're offering virtual or curbside service. So if you're not allowing people inside your building was physically closed. Does that answer your question?
If you are a part, and the person who's asking the question, if you're part of another entity, because we have at least 3 libraries that are a part of either a community center or a city building. But if the library portion of the building was closed to people, no traffic inside, then yes, the question is you were actually physically closed. They might have still walked in and gone straight to the city counter, but they did not go in and sit in the library.
Correct. Question 7, did your library provide outside or curbside service for circulation of physical materials during the pandemic? This will include drop-offs, contactless, or delivery. Okay. Question 8, did your library provide live virtual programs via the internet during the pandemic? These would be live streaming from Facebook or live YouTube. It does not count if you pre-recorded it and then posted it. That's going for a different question. They would be at a scheduled set time. You could be through Zoom, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. If you have another live version, that would count.
And that question is about the whole length of time. So you may be in a different phase right now. Your library may be fully open, but you still may be providing every Tuesday, 10 a.m. story time, but you were not providing it in the 3 months that you were physically closed. This counts.
Does that count the SLP Reader Zone? For the live programming, no. SLP Reader Zone does not count for live programming. That's more of tracking what people have done. Did the library create and provide recordings of program content via the internet during pandemic? So this could be the video that you recorded and then uploaded onto Facebook, not one you did live, but a pre-recorded one. Reading a story, walking through the hardware store. I was thinking of Plainville for that one. Talking to your patrons in a programming way. That would work as programming.
And although they may be posted at the exact same time, this is the difference between recording and live. And that's why we had you make such a big effort when we started to talk about this, because we knew they were going to ask the questions as different things.
Yes. Did your library provide Wi-Fi internet access to users outside the building before the pandemic? If your Wi-Fi is on 24/7 and you can get access to it outside the library walls or perimeter or whatever you want to call it if you're inside another building, if you don't have to be inside the library area to get the Wi-Fi, then you answer yes. Did your library provide Wi-Fi internet access to users outside the building during the pandemic? If you answered yes in question 10 and you didn't change anything for question 11, your answer would still be yes for question 11. If you answered no in 10, but in 11 you left your Wi-Fi on, or you were able to expand its reach, maybe you put in a repeater or something, then you could answer yes for 11. Did your library increase your access to Wi-Fi internet access to users outside of the building during the pandemic? This could be extending your reach, like I just talked about. It could be removing restrictions or sign-in authorizations. It could be leaving the Wi-Fi on 24/7 when you hadn't been doing that before. Moving the router so it gets better reach outside. There's a whole bunch of options there. If you have a specific question, you can ask me and I can tell you if that counts or not. Mm-hmm. Did the library staff work for other government agencies or nonprofit organizations instead of or in addition to their normal duties during the coronavirus pandemic? Only during work hours, not on personal time. So they're asking if, as a library employee, did they go help somewhere else as well during their regular library time?
In many large cities, library staff were assigned as daycare providers or people who went to community centers and delivered lunch. That is probably not the case in many of our spaces. But again, the question is being asked to every public library across the US. So some of these may like, what is this and why does it apply? Yeah. And it may or may not.
Yeah, these questions came from the federal side. So that's why some of them are a little strange. Number of weeks your library was closed due to the pandemic, round to the nearest whole number. And if you were not closed ever, you could put in 0. Board member volunteerism does not count, correct? Correct.
That is correct.
Remember, it says right here, library staff. So they must be employed by the library.
Okay, that number of weeks closed due to the pandemic. Again, that refers to that question up above. That very first question, the word closed means the same thing in question 14 as it does in 1. We hope that through our encouragement and through our talking to our boards, that every CKLS member library was closed for at least some period of time, because by the state mandate, we were on a safe at home order and libraries are not essential work.
All right, last question, and I know we're getting over. Number of weeks your library had limited occupancy during the pandemic. So if you had to limit how many people were in your building, or if you had by appointment only, that would count here. If you did not limit people in your library, you would put in 0. For both 14 and 15, your questions should be less than 52 or less, because of course there's only 52 weeks in a year.
However, this can still be happening. If you are still limiting 2 people or only 1 family at a time, those weeks should still be being counted as limited access, because your doors are not fully open because you are still not into that comfortable phase.
Correct.
So, and there's no right or wrong answer. Nobody's going to go, well, why weren't you open? This is an individual library decision. So don't look at by putting these numbers in that you're going to be in trouble with us or with anybody else, because that's not the case.
Things to remember. Social media doesn't count as programming. So that means if you just put on like, share with me what thing yellow you saw today, that doesn't count as programming. Programming is showing how to make a sewless mask. That would be programming. Printed handouts and handout crafts are not counted as programming here. However, so if you just said, come pick up your take and make bags, that would not count as programming virtually. But if you took the time to show them how to make the take and make, the video there would count as the programming. For pre-recorded programming, I cannot talk today. For pre-recorded programs, only count it at the time it airs live. That doesn't make sense. I'm gonna have to check on that one. Okay, that doesn't make sense. If it's pre-recorded, then it wasn't live.
Okay, this area is going to get real fuzzy and real difficult because some of it is going to say exactly opposite what we told you. And we're going to be very honest with you. What we heard from two different sources is completely opposite to, and they were both sitting in the same room as state data coordinators. So, and one was our state and one was a different state. I was told different things from two different people. We are going on our best information. Everything that you submitted for summer library still counts as programming, however it was done. You're not being penalized for something that we don't know. After all this comes through, I think it would be given a better definition so we will know how to count better for 2021. In my thinking, you can't go backwards to something that you don't know. You did it in October or June and whatever. You counted it and life goes on. So be as honest as you can, but don't freak out about these questions. If you need to talk about the programming question a little more, don't hesitate to call Maribeth or I. And we may actually just take some time and do a 30-minute specifically on programming, because I think we're going to have to figure out what the federal government wants in order for us to be able to tell you. And then we need to set out what that is. And really, this is the first time that Maribeth and I have sat in a room with other people and then heard these out loud.
Right.
And so this is going to be a tough spot for some of us. But again, you're not being penalized. We're going to do our best to make sure that you get credit for all the hard work that you've done in every single day, pandemic or not.
Yes. Okay, there is a question. What if you did make and takes and posted a pre-recorded programming like from Storytime and add additional information? That to me sounds like you did programming. But they don't want you to just count, okay, I set take and makes out and that was it. I think that's where the line is. If it was associated with something else that showed you how to do the take and make or read the story that went along with the take and make, to me, that's full programming. And that's where I think the line is.
And Amy, in answer to your question, by this definition, they would say it's not programming. I disagree.
And I think that's why I'm struggling with it too. I disagree with it too.
And so we anticipated that this was going to happen. And all of our prep to tell you to mark it one way or the other was in preparation. And I will be very honest with you, my 6 counterparts across the state didn't ask anybody to divide any of it because they were just waiting for these questions that we're just now seeing, and it's November or December.
We got them end of October, and they weren't fully fleshed out then. So we've been waiting for a while for these.
The others will be easier for you to answer, but this one is going to be the one that's cloudy.
And yeah.
And luckily, right now they say yes or no.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to answer the best of your ability and the best way you interpret it. And perhaps you're going to say it was programming because that's what CKLS advised you it was. And
I will take that. I will stand up for you for that and say, yes, that was programming.
And I will as well.
I believe it is. Okay. That was a quick run through of both of them, the state and the CKLS forms. Any quick questions before we call it for a close today?
You're welcome to type in the chat or unmute your mic and start talking. on a scale of 1 to 5, based on what you've seen, type in the chat where you think how you feel about being able to fill out your state report. 5 is confident, 1 is, I don't have a freaking idea.
5, 4, 5, 3. Yeah. Crystal's new. $2.5, that's fine. I expect that all of January I will be answering calls from all of you. And that's what I'm here for. And together we will find the best answer. One that works for what you did for your library. Yes, we did record it. So yes, you can catch up again with the recording. I will send out all the links to the samples of the CKLS forms. When I get enough information for the state form, I will send out a sample for that so you can print it out. And if you want to, you can write out your answers there and then just go up and fill them in from there. I will also provide the instructions for the state library once I have that. And I will send out information about the training from the state library once I have that.
Be brave and ask your questions as soon as they're questions. And if that means you send an email to Maribeth right away and say, I think I'm going to need a 10-minute chat about this area that I'm really not sure about. Or, you know, I got to start at the beginning. So the first thing we're going to recommend is go back through and watch the archive once we make that available. Once you see the forms, but, you know, don't hesitate to call on Maribeth or me. I can't believe I'm saying this, or Gail, because one of the 3 of us will help you through the steps. The one thing I can't do is give you your password. So that is a Maribeth question.
I can get you your password.
But we are here to help you. And then if you have questions about how to run those Pathfinder reports, Michael's in the room and he is willing to step up and help you do that. But your CKLS staff works for you. And this is the time of year when we kind of disappear a little bit because we've got to kill some vacation time. But the consultants all have phones and we are checking our email at least once a day. So just because we disappear doesn't mean we've gone away. So
yeah.
we're
and our office voicemail is forwarded to our emails. So please leave us a voicemail and at least a brief description of what your question is. So when we call you back, we have all the information ready in front of us so we can help you.
But if you just call and say, this is Diane from Bison, that doesn't help. I'm having trouble with questions 1 through 15. Now that might be a little more clear.
Okay, don't forget Monday the 21st is our librarians meeting. It's our holiday party. Wear your favorite holiday sweater, or I don't even care if it's a winter holiday. If it's 4th of July and that's your favorite holiday, wear your favorite holiday t-shirt. And we'll do some games. I think we'll probably have a trivia game. We'll probably have a couple other games to play. It'll just be kind of our end of year fun. So I hope you guys can join us on the 21st at 1:30.
It's our virtual open house, but we can't have cookies. So this is probably the day to bring your cup of cocoa or your cookie to your desk so we can all enjoy together. So we are here. Thank you all for your time today. And if we don't see you on Monday, happy holidays to all of you. And we will see you in the new year to work on your annual reports.
Yay!